Hi, I'm George Jenkins. I'd like to welcome you here today. This is the Eaglesmere Air, Auto, and Motorcycle Museums. We have about 9 buildings here filled with cars, motorcycles, and airplanes, all of which fly and operate, and typically we will try and put them on live display when people are here. So this is the Eaglesmere Motorcycle Museum, and one of my good buddies once remarked to me, anything worth doing is worth doing to excess, which is sort of the story of why this exists. I started riding motorcycles in the 1970s, and I got fascinated by motorcycles during that period. So what I have attempted to do here is to collect all of the superbikes of the 70s. And so the collection includes bikes that I had. For instance, I've got the first bike that I ever owned, which was a Honda CL90. I've got an identical Honda 750 to the one that I had when I was in college. And then I've got a whole raft of the bikes that, I would have loved to have ridden in the period or would love to have owned, but essentially have collected all of the hot bikes, the Yamahas, the Kawasaki's, the Suzuki's, the Hondas, and the Nortons and the Triumphs. Then they get contrasted with the superbikes, the modern superbikes. So we've got a bunch of the current breed of modern superbikes, and I think the principal point is here, all of these bikes are registered. They've all got new tires on them. They're all in great shape. We have a mechanic that works on the collection all the time, and we ride them all. This is the classic Honda CL90. This was my first bike, and I got one of these my junior year in high school. I rode this to high school every day. This was sort of the start of the DNA and the system. I just loved riding a motorcycle, and this was a super, super fun bike. You can find these today, but they're pretty rare. They're extremely rare to be in the condition that this bike is in. I then made a big progression. I went from this to the Honda 750 and had a 1970 Honda 750. Exact same color scheme as this Honda 750. This is in beautiful shape. This bike probably has a little less than 4,000 miles on it. But this was the bike that I rode throughout college. But I will say this, while this redefined motorcycling around the world with its 4-cylinder engine, 4 exhaust pipes, 4 carburetors, unique engine sound, they scaled down a version of it, which I fell in love with, which is the Honda 354. And if you look at them side by side, it's just sort of like a little miniaturized Honda 750. I never had one of these, but always wanted one. So obviously that was a good reason to have one in the collection. Now, as you go along, Honda ultimately progressed to the end of the decade to something called the Honda CBX. These are 2 CBXs. This one's a 1980. This one's a 1979. They were a stunning piece of technology. Just look at that motorcycle. That's a 6-cylinder engine. It's got dual overhead cams. It's got 6 carburetors. It sounds like a piece of jewelry when it runs, like a Ferrari when you get it opened up. I mean, they were just absolutely magnificent machines. They had double disc brakes on the front. I mean, they had done everything they could to come out with sort of groundbreaking technology and multi-cylinder engine design. The competitor to the Honda 750 was this baby, which got introduced by Suzuki in the mid-70s. This one's a 77. This is the GS 750. Double overhead cam engine, 4 cylinders, beautiful, smooth design. Very worthy competitor to the 750 Honda. But they also had a bike that they were running on the GP road circuit, which was known as the GT 750, which was also known as the Water Buffalo. This is a 3-cylinder, water-cooled, 2-cycle, 750cc engine, that runs like a turbine and is a magnificent cruising bike. It's kind of big, as you can see, so it's fairly heavy. The bike next to it, at first glance, looks like this, but this couldn't be more radical. It couldn't be more rare. Chances are you've never seen one of these. This virtually bankrupted Suzuki. Suzuki in the period, and this is in 1977, decided they wanted to one-up everybody. And this is a Wankel engine. So this is a 500cc single Wankel. It's got dual cooling systems, dual oil systems. It's the most complex motorcycle you could possibly imagine. It sounds like a turbine when you start it up. And again, keep in mind, we ride all these. So this is, a very, very unique motorcycle, both in period and now, because not many of them survived. That brings us to the Kawasaki's of the period. This was the end of the decade again, kind of like Honda, the advancement trying to show what they could do, dual disc brakes. This is another 6-cylinder engine. These again are very rare, double overhead cam, water cooled, 1300 cc's, shaft drive. This bike I was able to purchase from the original owner, so it's only ever had one owner during its life and sort of reflects that in terms of the condition it's in. This was the groundbreaker for Kawasaki. Kawasaki had to compete with the Honda 750. Their answer to the 750 was to come out with a 900. The 900, in contrast to the 750, had dual overhead cams versus the single overhead cam 750 Honda. And this was called the Kawasaki 900 Z1, 4 cylinders, 4 carburetors, 4 exhausts. Very similar in some ways, but a much higher performance bike than the 750 Honda. The bike that everybody who was into hot bikes wanted to have in the period is one of these babies. This was known as the Widowmaker. This is the Kawasaki 750 H2. This bike was known for being mind-bogglingly fast. It's a very light bike. Frankly, had a very whippy set of forks and frame on it. This one has been fully tricked out. So this engine originally was putting out about 70 horsepower. This one's putting out about 120. So this is in full race engine configuration with special exhausts on it and so forth, but otherwise stock, and it's a complete delight to drive. This was its younger brother. This was the Kawasaki H1 500. This is the way in 1975, if you had one of these and you had a little money, you spent all your money buying the hot race exhausts and putting those on, porting and polishing the heads, doing a bunch of exotic stuff and tricking it out, and this one's been tricked out as it would have been done in the period. And again, we ride all of these. I mean, they're just a blast. I'd mentioned this before. This is the 1976 Kawasaki KZ900. This was a defining bike for Kawasaki, as sort of a rich history with bikers of the 70s. Kawasaki decided to recreate this bike, and they did a great job. If you look at the features of the tank and the instrument cluster and the general look of it, and I want to say this is a 2018. This is their retro version. So they recreated the bike and they tried to pick up on the features. So you got the same analog instrument cluster, you got the same gas tank, same 900 cc's. This one, however, is water cooled, but they put fins on the engine to make it look like the original air-cooled engine. They carried through the seat and rear structure of the bike, and I think they just did a phenomenal job of sort of creating the image of what they had with the 900 Superbike in the mid-70s and bringing it back to life here in 2018. Thanks for joining us today at the Eaglesmere Motorcycle Museum. You can find out more about us by going to our website, eaglesmereairmuseum.org. and we encourage you to check there for opening times given the impact of the coronavirus.